Now, last week we started this series, Biblically Correct, talking about the watershed decision that every one of us has to make in our lives. And that watershed decision is whether you're going to be a theist or a humanist, whether you're going to be into theism or whether you're going to be into humanism. Theism is the belief that there is a God, and that God is to be worshiped, honored, and praised. That God, because of who He is Lord. Humanism says there is no God. Humanism says that man is God, that man is able in his own ability to rise up and build a utopian society. And because there is no God, I really have free will to do whatever I want to do, because at the end of the day, there's really no right and wrong. Now, this decision, whether you're going to follow God or not follow God, is the watershed decision of your life. Every other decision that you're going to make in your life is going to be as a result of this decision. So it only stands to reason that the next question to be asked is there a God? Is there a God? And that's where we're focusing today. Is there a God? And here we're in a church, so to that answer, we're probably going to say yes. Bear with me. So as we begin, I want to encourage you to let your minds wander for just a few moments. Let's pretend that last week somebody invited you to get away for the weekend. They have a cabin, kind of remote, out in the woods, out in a forest, and they've invited you to come spend the weekend. It's a place that's far from the daily grind. No television, no cell phone towers. I mean, it's worthless. You can't get a signal. Because of that, we're not going to think about politics. We're not going to think about the coronavirus. We're just going to have peace of mind for 72 hours. Does that sound like a nice place to be? You readily accept and jump at the opportunity. And before you know it, you're on a long walk. And you're moving through the forest, moving through the trees, enjoying the dazzling beauty that is all around you. And as you move along, you see something in the grass. The sun is glinting off of it, and it catches your attention. And so you immediately start moving towards it. And as you draw closer, you notice that there, nestled into the grass, is a pocket watch. You bend down, you pick it up, and you start to take in its beauty. It's got a platinum bowl, and in this platinum, on this platinum bowl is kind of a handle, and on that little handle there's a leather strap that looks to be like it's engraved. The middle of the face of the watch is missing, and it gives you the ability to see right down into the watch, and you can see all the gears and the springs and all of the inner workings of the watch. Numbers have been crafted out of metal, and they've been carefully laid onto this face plate. And beautiful but delicate hands, there are 3 of them, designate the hour and the minute and the seconds. As you stare at it, you notice that the second hand isn't moving. The watch is just there. So you reach down, you take the little post, and you give it a few spins, and that quickly the second hand starts moving along. You put the pocket watch up to your ear, and you can hear the tick, 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 as it's keeping time. As you stare at the watch, my question to you this morning is, what's your assumption? Where did the watch come from? Did the wind whipping through the trees somehow take the local elements and bring them together into this timepiece? Did it just miraculously evolve to be this pocket watch? Did the heat of the day magically over years, many hundreds of years, refine the platinum that it found here and make it into this bowl? Did other pieces of aluminum and brass over years and years make all the gears and all the springs and all the posts that everything hangs on to come together into the watch and then connect together to be able to work in harmony together? Did bark fall from the tree and over many years of decay form this beautiful round circle that formed the faceplate? Did squirrels or other animals dropping some maybe metal pieces they had found out someplace in the forest suddenly mold together and form some numbers and fall perfectly in place? And then almost miraculously, as the rest of it did, a piece of glass, after it's been weathered by erosion over all these years, that it just magically fit right into the top groove of this platinum bowl to be able to form the timepiece. Is that what happened? Or did someone design and craft the watch? And someone on a walk, much like yours, accidentally dropped it and lost it there in the grass? I mean, when you look at a pocket watch, what do you think? What do you assume? Where did it come from? Now, you know as I do that it's ridiculous to assume that this watch just happened. The blind forces of nature could actually bring the pieces together and form them into the watch. I mean, the pieces, the precision, and the purpose of the watch speak loudly that it was thoughtfully designed, thoughtfully crafted, and with purpose put together. It didn't just pop out of nowhere. Nobody believes that. We see the watch and we instantly conclude, we automatically know that it was designed and created. We'd say that someone is silly. In fact, we might go so far as to say somebody would be stupid to assume otherwise. And to that end, it's an amazing thing to me that people look out at the universe, or maybe just look out at the earth, or maybe even look at their hand, and the assumption is that it happened by chance. That over billions and billions of years, the pieces came together and they formed themselves into this working phenomenon. That it was a blind process. That it all happened by accident. And yet the world we find ourselves is teaching us just that. We live in a world today where people are diligently working to prove that the precision of the universe or the miraculous ability of your central nervous system came about by nothing but blind chance. It's an accident. But the Bible speaks differently. The Bible says in Psalm chapter 19, verse 1 through 4, that the heavens declare the glory of God. The sky above proclaims its handiwork. Day after day, the heavens, the sky, they pour out speech. And night, day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. This is one of those moments where you're going to forgive me because I've been reading this out of the NIV for so long, I have it memorized, and now I'm reading it differently. So, deep breath, Derek. Verse 2, day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There's no speech, nor are there words whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Romans chapter 1, verse 20 in the New Testament says much the same thing. The invisible attributes, namely God's eternal power and his divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so that men are without excuse. Without excuse for what? Without excuse to acknowledge that there is a God. The Bible's clear here, friends. There is a God. There is a God. Would you say that with me? There is a God. Everything we see did not come about by blind chance. It happened because God declared it to be so. God created, which brings us to a point of division. We have two stories about the universe. The first one is evolution. And for our discussion today, evolution is a by-chance string of blind events and mutations that brought us to today and all that is, over billions and billions of years. Or there's creation. Creation is the determined stroke by a purposeful God who designed it and made it just as it is. Now, I said at the beginning, of course, you're going to hear in the church that we believe that there is a God behind all of creation. The question this morning Is there any proof for that? And let me tell you, the answer is resoundingly yes. I want to ask you to think through what you already know to be true and see if it doesn't lead you straight to God. Because the Bible says it should. The Bible says that every part of our world cries that there's a creator, a master designer who put it all into place. In fact, the book of Genesis says that God simply spoke and he brought it into existence. So let me take a few moments and put a few thoughts in front of you. Direct your mind here. Thoughts that will help you think down these lines. And let's begin by looking at the case for a designer. Now, there's a guy by the name of William Dembski. He's a mathematician. He's a philosopher. And up until 2016, he was a senior fellow with the Discovery Institute Center for Science and Culture, and he was also the senior research scientist with the Evolutionary Informatics Lab. Dembski is an influential voice in a world called intelligent design. He's written several books. Probably his classic is here on the screen, a picture, which is called Intelligent Design. You can get this on Amazon for maybe $20. You could download it onto your Kindle. I would encourage you to read Dembski, but let me just tell you that you don't read him casually. If you're going to read, you have to sit down with a purpose and intent to not be sidetracked. Shut everything else off and focus your attention because he's deep. Dembski points out that modern science and its disciplines have highly developed methods for distinguishing intelligent causes from undirected natural causes. Okay, so, all right, that's a big mouthful. What does it mean? Okay, when archaeologists find an unusually shaped object at a site, what they work to do is to determine, did natural phenomenon bring it together? Was it a natural process that ordered this together? Or was there intervention? Did maybe humans work to make it happen, to construct something for a specific purpose? So when they look at a smooth stone, like in a riverbed, the question is, did man do this? Or did maybe a rock that got into the river over hundreds of years with water running over it, did the water smooth out the stone? It's really easy to come to this conclusion. The water probably smoothed out the stone, river rocks. On the other hand, when archaeologists would dig up an arrowhead, the question is the same. How did this come to be? Was that fashioned by a river someplace? Did a rock fall in and did it come into this specific shape? Or was it the intentional work of a hand that brought it into being for a purpose? Well, of course, we would all conclude that the arrowhead was formed by man. We can see it. We understand it. The point is that it is possible to determine if something evolved by a natural process or if it's the result of an intentional act. Now, the central insight of design theory, of intelligent design theory, is that the same type of reasoning can be applied to the study of life, human life. Dembski has developed what he calls an explanatory filter that allows investigators in any discipline, including the sciences, to differentiate actual instances of design from other natural occurrences. So this explanatory filter has three parts to it. The first part is that we need to ask if a particular occurrence was naturally necessary or if it was contingent. Can you read that and go, huh? Let me give a little explanation. If you were to drop 100 Scrabble tiles, any Scrabble players here, Words with Friends players, if you take the Scrabble tiles and you were to pull them out of the box, put them into a bag, and you were to dump them onto a table, what you would expect is that all of those Scrabble tiles would probably lie flat. You wouldn't expect them to land on their edge. You'd probably expect them to lie flat. The law of physics would dictate that this is what would probably happen. So the occurrence is naturally necessary. Something falling, something lands, it's lying flat. But if you were to find all of those tiles lying face up, all the letters up or face down, all the letters down. That's not a natural situation. The truth is that if you dump tiles out of a bag, they're going to fall, and they're going to fall both ways. Some tiles up, some tiles down. In other words, there was an intervention that occurred if all the tiles are flat and facing one way or the other. Someone or something had to get involved. The result is contingent on somebody getting involved to making this happen. So if an action is contingent, if somebody needs to get involved to make it happen, then you move on to the second stage of Dembski's filter, and that would be to ask whether the occurrence is simple or complex. If you were to find all the Scrabble tiles facing up so you could see all the letters, you would say that's probably contingent. And then you notice that some of the tiles lying next to each other were forming words like an, or it, or the, the. You wouldn't necessarily be surprised because there are a lot of those letters in the Scrabble tiles. It would be natural to see some of these letters lying next to each other. But if, on the other hand, you came across of Scrabble tiles that said maybe this: Derek Lauer is the most handsome man in all of the world. It wasn't meant to be funny. Come on, we're just speaking truth here from the pulpit, right? If you saw a sentence like this in the Scrabble tiles, you'd probably begin to think that either Derek was messing with them or maybe his wife was messing with the tiles. It's contingent, and there's a complex thing in front of us. This is not simple at all. This couldn't have just happened. If you could drop the tiles onto the table for 100 years every 10 seconds, and you would never get to this statement. You could take just these letters and put them in a bag and dump them out. You would never get to the statement. The chance of it happening is zero. So if you see something that's contingent, somebody had to get involved, and then it starts getting complex, you've moved to the second stage of Dembski's filter, and it takes you to the third stage, which is to ask whether the pattern inherent in the complex occurrence is ad hoc or specific. Ad hoc pattern is one that really has no meaning whatsoever. It's just a single occurrence, and maybe it was an accident that some letters came together, but it has no purpose and no meaning. But when you come across something that has purpose, like an arrowhead or like a pocket watch, you have to ask yourself if a blind process really put that together. And the answer would be no. It has a purpose, which means somebody thought about that. Somebody decided this needed to happen, and they moved together with a purpose to make it happen. According to Dembski, to determine if something is designed, you just move through a process. You ask, is it natural or is it contingent? Does somebody need to intervene? Is it simple or is it complex? Is it ad hoc? It has no purpose, or it is purposeful, very purposeful. It's specific. Now you just go back to the watch in the forest. It meets all of Dembski's criteria about being intelligently designed. It doesn't follow any natural laws. It's completely contingent. For that watch to exist, somebody had to get involved. It's no way simple. It's very complex, and it has a very specific purpose to tell time. In other words, when you look at the watch, you would quickly surmise that it's been designed, that it's been created. It didn't create itself. It did not evolve. The watch was very purposefully put together. And to that end, it really is possible to determine there is a God by simply following these 3 points, which leads to the second thought. And friends, what I want to encourage you to do this morning is really just literally open up your eyes and focus. And maybe take some time this week to not just kind of blindly walk through your week, taking things for granted, but to open up your eyes and begin to look and ask the question. The application of intelligent design theory to life is really straightforward. On multiple levels, life exhibits a highly complex, specified order that can't be explained by a natural process. So let's just take a look at 2 examples. Let's begin by looking at something very, very, very small, the macromolecular. And what I want to put in front of you is DNA. The DNA macromolecular molecule uses a complex structure that looks a bit like a very long spiral staircase. It's called, in scientific terms, as a double helix. You've probably seen this picture. Each step or rung is formed by pairing up 2 of 4 nucleotide, these molecules containing nitrogen. Adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine, ATCG. Now, for DNA to work, it's not enough to just have a lot of A's and C's and T's and G's. It's not enough just to have a lot of these things. That would be like having a large number of Scrabble tiles all lined up on the table spelling nonsense words. It doesn't do any good. No, the nucleotides must be strung together in a very specific and precise order, and the 2 strands matched up to convey information to the rest of the cell in which the DNA abides. These nucleotides function just like letters in a sentence. But a DNA molecule is significantly more intense than a sentence. When you think of DNA, you need to think more along the lines of a book. What you need to know about DNA is that it is the building block of all life. A single DNA molecule carries the same amount of information as 1 volume of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Now think about that. You've opened up maybe letter A, and there's hundreds of pages with very small print, with very detailed statements. A book that size, of that magnitude, represents the information in every cell of your body, in your DNA. No one's seen an encyclopedia lying in the forest would hesitate to say that it came from someplace, that somebody very purposefully put it together, got the paper, got the letters, put the type together, ran it through a machine, bound it. It didn't just happen. So when we find a living creature composed of zillions of cells in their body, that each one contains DNA, the complete structure of DNA in every cell of your body, we ought to assume that it likewise had an intelligent cause. Carl Sagan, an astronomer, was believed to be brilliant by a lot of people, an atheist who believed in evolution and pointed to that and pointed to that and pointed to that, had interesting things to say. Like in his book Cosmos, on page 4, he says this: the information content of the human brain expressed in bits is probably comparable to the total number of connections among neurons, and that would be in your brain, the connections, about 100 trillion. If written out in English, say, that information would fill some 20 million volumes, as many as in the world's largest libraries. The equivalent of 20 million books is inside the head of every one of us. The brain is a very big place and a very small place. The neurochemistry of the brain is astonishingly busy, the circuitry of a machine more wonderful than any devised by humans. Exactly right. So what's the chance? What's the chance that it just happened to fall into place? That this amazing technology that exists in your head or that exists in every cell of your body just fell into place. And remember, when you think about it falling into place, you first have to think about where it all came from, where all the molecules, where all the proteins, where all the building blocks of the cell came from. Already formed, already present, all ready to be lined up in the exact right sequence so the DNA of your cells could work. But that's not what evolution teaches. Evolution first teaches that these different enzymes, proteins, had to be formed. And they were formed by a blind process, which is more miraculous than after you even have all of this stuff together, lining it up. Come on, do you really believe that? The pocket watch, as complex as it is infinitely more simple when it's compared to your DNA. It's like comparing a Tinker Toy statue to a space shuttle. Where do you think DNA came from? And that's the point. Design is seen in the macromolecular details of life, the infinitely small, which leads to letter B. Design is not only seen in the very small, it's also seen in the very big things. Design is seen in the expanse. And what I mean here is in the universe. You can look at very small things or very big things, and they all lead to the same place. There is a God. There has to be. Astronomers tell us that the universe is extremely vast. How vast? Well, how about this? Light travels at 186,000 miles per second. In fact, to be exact, 186,282 miles per second. How fast is that? If I had a gun that shot a bullet the speed of light, and if that bullet had the ability to take a trajectory and just keep going, and it could follow the curvature of the earth, if I went bang and shot it and then said 1001, bang, 1001, and stepped out of the way, that bullet would have gone around the earth 7 times and gone through my heart before I ever even had a chance to move out of the way. Light moves at an unbelievable pace. Light traveling that fast takes 1.25 seconds to get from the moon here. It takes 8 minutes to get from the sun to here. 93 million miles in 8 minutes. Light traveling across our solar system from one end to the other takes 11 hours. Our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, consisting of billions of stars, is 100,000 light years across. That means if you could travel at 182,000 miles per second, 186,000 miles per second, and keep up that pace, in a year you would travel almost 6 trillion miles. And 6 trillion miles times 100,000 equals 100,000 light years. That's just the Milky Way galaxy. And astronomers are telling us there's someplace like between 100 and 200 billion galaxies out there. And the Milky Way galaxy is just one. In fact, a rather small galaxy. One of the galaxies lying next to the Milky Way is the Andromeda galaxy, and it's literally double the size of the Milky Way galaxy. What does it mean? It means out there is space beyond our comprehension. But the huge space is ordered. It's ordered. The earth. The earth sits on an axis of 23 degrees. That allows us to face the sun at a certain point, which allows more of the earth to be tilled, to be farmed. We see that all around us, and we can be grateful. The earth rotates at a speed of 1,000 miles an hour. If it rotated only 100 miles an hour, days on the earth would be like 10 times longer. Not 24 hours, but 240 hours. The summer would burn all vegetation. The winter's night would be incredibly cold. Don't take the moderate temperature of the earth for granted, just saying that not only are we the perfect distance from the sun to inhabit life, we are, but we're also rotating at the right thing. The moon, which is just a 250,000 miles, 250,000 miles away from us, and it slows much down. A day on the moon is 27 Earth days. In that time, the temperature varies on the moon from 260 degrees Fahrenheit to 280 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. You think about that. The earth is in the right place, the right distance from the right size sun, at the right tilt, with the right atmosphere. Where did it come from? Accident? And speaking of the moon, the earth is also the right distance from the right sized moon. The ratio of the moon to the earth is 10 times greater than any other moon in our solar system. If the moon were 100 times smaller, which is the average size moon in our solar system, its influence on the earth would be greatly changed. The moon, on average, is 240,000 miles from the earth. Did you know that the moon regulates the ocean tide? If the moon were only 50,000 miles away from the earth, the water of the ocean would literally flood the earth completely twice a day. And it's not just the moon. The movements of the planets in our solar system are so precise that scientists can calculate exactly where they will be, and not just in our solar system, but moving out to our galaxy and beyond. Scientists are able, because of the precision of all of this, to know exactly where something is going to be in the night sky, exactly in the future. We can tell 100 years from now where Venus will be and where Pluto will be and where Halley's Comet will be. I mean, that amazes me. We know in advance when solar eclipses are going to happen because of the precision of the universe and these bodies moving. We can determine, all because of this precise movement. And did you know that the best clocks in the world are set by the precision of the universe? The Naval Observatory, which is the United States timekeeper, makes continual observation of the stars and adjusts time according to how it all moves. The pocket watch had to have a watchmaker. Isn't it just reasonable to believe that a universe that not only has precision and order, but continues to be in that same precision and order, that it's held into place without flying out of place, that same logic ought to be applied? We could spend hours here. Let's just move one step further. Not only is the universe a very big place, things like stars and planets exactly where they need to be, at exactly the right size, at exactly the right proportion, at exactly the right temperatures. The point is that design is seen not only in the huge things of the universe, it's seen in the very small things of the universe. The universe is exactingly constructed. A few years ago, I went through a message series called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, and we were talking about some of this. If you want to read it, we can go back. I'll be happy to give you the copies. But the precise balance of all necessary electrons, protons, neutrons, atoms, and molecules is beyond our ability to comprehend. We could talk for hours right here. You just change the weight of a molecule or an atom or a neutron by a minute, like by 0.0000, or you add a few more or you take a few away, and the whole universe collapses. Literally, the universe sits on a razor's edge and has to be that way for it to exist. It all speaks of design. From the very big things to the very small things that we see and the things that we can't even see. We're just beginning to understand. How did all these things get here? And more, how did they get to not only to be here, but get to be in the right spot with the right quantity and the right size? They had to be intentionally constructed and put into place. It was designed. And that proves that there is a God. Design demands a designer. Design demands a designer. Would you say that with me? Design demands a designer. It's a theistic proof, a proof that there is a God. It's what Romans chapter 1, verse 18, and Psalm chapter 19, verses 1 through 4 are claiming powerfully. They tell us that the creation points to God. So open up your eyes, which leads to one last thought. And that's by Darwin's own evaluation, he was completely wrong. Now, I know I touched on this last week and I made mention, but I want to circle back to it again this week. The existence of the universe, the existence of man, the existence of the earth, they all point to a creator. And more, they point to the truth that things didn't just evolve slowly over a long period of time. They couldn't have. The theory has no conceivable way of coming to fruition. It just could not have been so. It could not have happened. And the evidence proves that point. Darwin said that the fossil record would tell the story. He said the fossil record would prove him right or wrong. If his theory was true, if things evolved a step at a time, then there would be a large number of transitional fossils proving it to be so. There would have to be, moving from one species to another. Things moving from an alligator to a bird just doesn't, one day it's an alligator and then the next thing that pops out is a bird and it flies away. No. What Darwin was teaching is that gradual change over many years, and evolutionists are now talking about billions of years. And here's what I'm telling you, friends. From the moment that Darwin wrote all of this on the origin of species in 1859, for the last 160 years, archaeologists and more paleontologists have been looking. They've been madly searching for the missing links, the intermediate steps. And you know what they found? Nada. They keep finding the same, for most part, the same animals. There's been a moment where they've said, oh, maybe this is kind of half bird, half lizard. Maybe this is it. But they're honestly, the records are just completely incomplete. There's nothing there. You can't look at the evidence any other way. There aren't any intermediate fossils, which means there weren't any intermediate animals, which means nothing evolved. And by Darwin's own evaluation, he was therefore wrong. And one more thought here. Irreducible complexity in organisms destroys Darwin's whole idea of survival of the fittest. Natural selection, the survival of the fittest, has now been completely debunked. It's been proven wrong. The thought of natural selection is that a weak gene or a useless gene is eaten up by something that's stronger. And so therefore what happens is things evolve because they need to. Only the strong, only the useful can survive. The whole thought came from finch beaks on the Galapagos Islands. But it was wrong. There are whole systems in your body that are many different, varied pieces that have come together to form a mechanism to enable that thing to happen. Like your nervous system, like your eyesight, like the clotting of blood. These systems are made up of various parts. And if you just take out one of those parts, you don't have a system that kind of doesn't work as well. You have a system that doesn't work. Now, there's a great book, and I made reference to this last week. I'd encourage you to go to get him. It's called Darwin's Black Box. It's by a guy named Michael Behe. And in the book, Behe uses a mousetrap to help make this point. In a simple traditional mousetrap, you have 5 pieces. There's a platform, a wooden platform, and that's the platform is the place where the other 4 pieces are attached. Then you have a catch. This is the place where you put the cheese or better peanut butter. This is the thing that attracts the mouse, so the mouse will come. Then you have a spring, and you have a hammer. The hammer is the thing that the spring holds with force to be able to slap. And then you have this holding bar. This bar goes over this bar goes over the hammer, and it's connected to the catch. So when the mouse starts nibbling in the cheese, it's really light there. That holding bar will release, and then the hammer with the spring goes whack, and you have a dead mouse. The point is that you need all 5 pieces to make the mousetrap work. You take one of these pieces away, you don't have a mousetrap that kind of works at 20 or 30 or 40% efficiency. You have a mousetrap that does not work. Do you hear what I'm saying? Behe's point is there are systems in your body that work this way. Things like your eyesight. There are all these different pieces that have to come together to be able to, you take any one of them out, your eyes don't work. Systems that are far more intricate than the mousetrap. You take it out, you take a piece out, it doesn't work. You need the exact right pieces, and not only the exact right pieces, the engineered. They fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, which means it couldn't have evolved. Someone designed these pieces and set them into place all at the same time so you could see, so you could feel, so you could move, so you could breathe, so your heart would work. The reality is that there is little evidence that any of what Darwin hypothesized is accurate. In fact, just the opposite is true. Scientists from every field are turning to God. When they start to get honest, they're saying it's the only place that we could land. They're looking at the evidence and concluding there has to be a God. A God who designed it all, a God who brought it all into being. So the question that begs to be asked then is why? Why, when the evidence is so overwhelming that something was designed, that something was put together, that it was put together for a purpose, that there was a plan, that it wasn't a blind process at all, why would man run away from that? And the answer is in Romans 1. When we do away with God, we do away with a boss. And when we do away with a boss, we do away with morality, right, wrong, a determination about how to live. If all we are is nothing more than a cosmic accident, which humanists say we are, then that does away with any ultimate power or force. And more importantly, it does away with any responsibility to follow a moral law. Live as you will, eat, drink, be merry. Tomorrow you're going to die, so do what you want to do today. And that's the point. Man is in all his wisdom has done away with God so he can do what he wants to do. And to that the Bible has a response. It's foolish to make that claim. David, in Psalm chapter 14 says, the fool says there is no God. Paul, 1,000 years after David made the same claim, claiming to be wise, Romans 1:22, they became fools. Now, friends, here's my question this morning. Where are you? You have two baskets, a basket of theism and a basket of humanism. A basket that says that man can do it and man's strong enough and able enough to figure it all out and to move ahead all by his own and he can figure it out and make a utopia. Are your eggs going to be in that basket, or are your eggs going to be in a basket that says there is a God? When I look out, I can't see anything but a God. It has to be a God. The evidence points this way, and so therefore I'm a theist. The problem is that when you accept that there is a God, he puts expectations onto your life because he's Lord. If there is a God, then he's in charge. If there is a God, then he's the boss. And we've been saying it for years. Jesus is Lord. Jesus is Lord. Would you say it with me? Jesus is Lord. Come on, say it again. Jesus is. Philippians 2 draws this picture that says the day is coming when we're all going to stand before the judgment seat of Christ. And when we do, and by the way, Jesus is the judge because Jesus is God. When we all stand there, he's going to divide sheep from goats. Sheep are the ones that have accepted him, accepted his love, accepted his grace, accepted their payment for sins, and they've been made right. Goats are the people that have not accepted that. And as these sheep and goats are separated, those that are going to spend eternity in heaven and those that are going to spend eternity in someplace not so heavenly, the last thing that is going to happen to all these people before they are sent to an everlasting doom is that they will bow and they will be forced to say, Jesus is Lord. Because it's the truth. Jesus is Lord. Would you say it with me again? Jesus is Lord. You have a choice. Theists believe that there is a God, but it's not enough to believe that there's a God. You believe in God? You even fear? So what? The devil does that, the book of James says. What God is now calling for you to do is believe in him, have faith in him, put your eggs all in this basket, and then follow him. Walk his way. This is what the fight's about. I want to do what I want to do, or I'm going to do what God wants me to do. And this is why there's a fight, and this is why it all boils down to this simple structure. Humanism, theism. Which are you going to choose? Where are you going to be? The goal would be theism. There is a God, and Jesus is Lord. And that Lord is calling us to be biblically correct. Bow your heads. Would you do that? And friends, my question this morning is, are you there? It's easy to say Jesus is Lord. My question is He? Have you accepted Him as the Lord of your life? And I don't mean because you've made a statement. I mean that you've actually, truly picked up that piece and put Him in authority over your life. Are you there? Is God going to look at you and say that that is your choice? That you are in His camp? That you are following Him? Really, life is that simple. And He's calling you today to make the statement, Jesus is Lord. To put every egg of your life into that basket and then make a determination to follow Him. So Lord, help us. Help us to see clearly. Father, help us to define really clearly in our minds the big difference here. That there is a God, that He did create, and that makes Him Lord. Father, help us to see You. Help us to move towards You. Help us to worship You with all of our hearts, with all of our minds, with all of our soul, with all of our strength. And that is our prayer. We lift it up in the name of Jesus. And God's people said,